Right, hello and welcome. First of all, I'd like to introduce you to one of the first of our series of leadership topics. We at Seer are fortunate enough to work with some amazing organizations around the world representing many different industries, verticals, and even technology sectors. And what we thought we'd like to do is to kind of utilize some of the brain power and experience that many of our partners have, and to talk about some topics that are kind of pertinent to particular sectors and segments of our industry. So today, I'm pleased to start off the series with a conversation, a fireside chat, if you wish, around sales and sales leadership and what that means in the modern world. So we've got three really experienced sales leaders, which I'll get them to introduce themselves, and then following an introduction, we've got four topics that are kind of pertinent, and we speak to CEOs and chief revenue officers around the world. We kind of get these questions being raised and over drinks and more formal situations. So we'll start talking about those. But in terms of introductions, let's start off with introducing the panel today. So we've got Kevin Armstrong, John Doris, and Joe Padder, and I'll introduce each one of them to talk about their background and why we've selected them for this event. So, Kevin, do you want to go first, please?
Sure. Yeah, Kevin Armstrong. I'm based just north of Atlanta, Georgia. I have almost 30 years of working and running the revenue and growth engines for technology companies, consulting firms. I've been very, very fortunate to have run 6 different Microsoft partners over those years. My teams have also brought to market SAP, Oracle, Salesforce, you name it. Pretty much every solution that you can imagine out there. I've been very, very fortunate to have some incredible teams and really multiple size organizations, from small to multinational, large organizations. Really, the last couple of years, I've spent quite a bit of time in cloud infrastructure, cybersecurity, and the last year or so have spent quite a bit of time in and around the AI ecosystem. So really looking forward to having the conversation, and thank you for having me.
Thanks, Kevin. John?
Hey all, I'm really pleased to be here, and I think which is really interesting about this panel, right? We have people who have different experiences, right? Kevin, you've worked across multiple technologies, right? Have multiple sales role. My profile is slightly different, right? So, people say I was on the tools, right? So I was a D365 CRM consultant from version 3.2, right? And, the breadth that we get to these days. But now the last probably 15 years, I've headed up various sales organizations going from boutique to GSI, now to Telefonica Tech as well. Again, working across the breadth of the biz apps and laterally AI business solutions as I am now today. Joe?
Thanks, John. It's quite hard to follow those two, but I'll try. So my career has been a bit more varied. Did a law degree and then fell into digital marketing, set up an agency in my 20s, built that and sold that, and then came into the dynamic space about 15 years ago when I first started working with Sam back at a company called ePartners, which then became part of eBex. Fortunate enough to rise through the ranks quite quickly, ended up being a sales director there, running a team of about 65 sales, pre-sales people and bid managers. We sold that company to DXC Technologies and was a very, very sort of well-oiled engine, really. So we sold pretty much everything from finance supply chain, or F&O back in the day, Business Central, CE, Azure, BI, so pretty much the full stack. And we sort of were delivering about 60 net new logos of size every year and probably closing about $25 million worth of TCV every quarter.
Awesome. Amazing experience. So hopefully we can bring that to bear in some of the conversation topics. So first one I thought would be really interesting for us to discuss. I think we've all trying to give everybody's age away, but I think Kevin and I are probably the oldest on the panel. But certainly, I started selling Dynamics back in the late 1990s, even before Microsoft acquired the platform. So kind of be really interested to get the panel's thoughts on, how is selling business applications evolved in your careers? What's kind of changed, but also what's remained the same, and kind of how does that kind of inform the way you go about selling within your organizations? So John, do you want to kind of kick us off with that, please?
Yeah, I do. And Joe, I didn't know that you did a law degree and didn't use it as similar to I did as well. Our parents are proud, aren't they? Yeah, I mean, look, we could talk about this one for ages, the journey that we've all been on, right? But I think, it's the breadth, right? It's the breadth of the product as well. I don't know what Kevin and Joe think, right? But if I looked at the sales teams that I had in the past, right? I'd have one guy looking after CE, one person looking after finance as well. That's not possible anymore, right? Did I think the conversations that I was having about sales and case management back, 16, 17 years ago, do I think that I'd suddenly be having conversations around migrations from Power Automate desktop, solutions, Blue Prism and stuff like that? I need to educate myself every single day, right, to make sure that I stay on top of the technology, to make sure my sales team stay on top of the technology. And it's that constant learning curve as well. That's what's changed as well. Everything we do is nuanced, right? The other thing I'd like to say is that the customers are educated, right, as well. That's the thing that's changed as well. Not saying it was easy to sell in the past, right? But I'm not just selling to one person within the organization. I'm selling to procurement, right? I'm selling to the CTO, right? I'm selling to the SMEs as well. And they are all bought into that decision-making process as well. So I think, that has evolved over the years. So breadth of technology, right? And expertise in the technology. One thing's remained the same, right? Constantly, right? It's competitive out there, right? We saw over the last couple of years, probably 5 years ago, we saw lots of organizations with mergers and acquisitions, right? Joe, you've been through that journey as well, right? But now laterally, we're seeing a lot of specialist organizations, especially in the AI world as well, which means that we still need to become specialists as well. So I think being bleeding edge and cutting edge, right, and being first to market remains the same. Kevin, I'd welcome your thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, I think you're spot on. And what's interesting is you said two things there. You said we have to be able to be more broad and cover more ground, but at the same point, we also still have to be specialists.
Yeah, exactly.
Of selling in this complex world. I'm old enough to tell you that I started selling this stuff before the internet was in place. So what was interesting about that was we were the conduit to information. Right. That's what a buyer would call us for, was to get the information that they didn't have readily available. Obviously, that's changed dramatically. And to your point, John, buyers come more educated. They come more prepared. So what I think it really comes down to is we have what I call a personal value equation. And it becomes, I have to be able to add value fast. Right. I have to be able to teach them something they don't know about the process that they're about to go through. My job is to help them navigate a buying decision as quickly and as accurately as they possibly can. And that's really evolved quite a bit. And I would even throw this. Even COVID changed buyer behaviors significantly.
Aligned, yeah.
Because people wanted, you think about that if you had told me that people would make business decisions sitting at home on their couch while streaming Netflix on their iPad and point and click and buy certain technologies, I would have told you no way. Yeah. But they do if you enable them to buy things quicker. What we do is still complex. We still have to do the detailed work. We still have to earn the trust of the buyer, but buyer behavior is evolving quickly. Their access to information is evolving quickly, and we really have to be able to facilitate a good buying process.
And I'm sorry, I'm going to try to let you finish because you let me finish as well. And Joe, I'm jumping ahead of you as well. But do you think as well with and we're going to come on to this, I'd imagine, several times throughout this conversation, right? With the whole agentic piece, right? We've seen a lot of noise about it as well, but it's time it started delivering as well, right? So that whole adoption piece, right, which was similar to the Power Platform, Kevin, around the same time around COVID as well. It was trying to identify those use cases, right, that showed value, that hit the bottom line, right, not hit the top line, you know what I mean, as well. So you need to instill confidence, but you need to show them a roadmap to use that technology better as well. So they might buy a little bit smaller, right? But it'll grow over time. You need to show them that they can go on that journey.
Yeah, I agree. I completely agree.
Yeah, I totally agree with all of that. I think, the market is very, very difficult, to sort of sell in today. I think you've all alluded to it. The reality is now there's a lot of point solutions out there that do a lot of stuff, and they do it very effectively, and they do it very time and cost effectively. So, if you look at the buyers out there now, as you mentioned before, John, they're very well informed, but equally the time to return investment has become even more crucial than it was before. I think when we first started out 15 years ago, to Kevin's point, they sort of relied on us as sellers. They took our sort of word for it a bit. There was an acceptance that the project could be 500 days, 1,000 days, 3,000 days. Now customers are saying, well, we always ask this. You're telling me it's a vanilla product. You're telling me it's standard. Why is it going to take 200 days to implement finance? And it's a very, very valid question. So, even I was thinking about this and saying, actually, the MVP approach, customers now believe that I can go on and get a solution in very quick and get time to value, and then I can actually build on that investment. And I think the other thing that I'd add is, if you think about the market pressure, interestingly, when we think about what's changed, what stayed the same, day rates are a classic thing for me, right? 15 years ago, when we first started selling, we're probably selling about £950 a day. I don't think that rate has changed materially. I'm talking UK GBP
You're right.
terms.
You're right.
But actually, if we look at where we are as organizations, our cost pressures have increased probably 10 to 15% year on year from a salary perspective. But actually now we're at a point where we have to be competitive, but we're still selling at a rate that actually, if we don't perform or we don't sell that deal, there's very, very little margin for error, right? And that's the reality where we sort of live today.
Excellent. Really good insights of where we are today and what's changed. So kind of moving on from that, we talked about the kind of the landscape as sellers, but I think each of you really managed quite disparate teams in your careers, as John said, from a GSI to working within the team, and Kevin, you've had a whole range of that as well as you, Joe. So let's talk about when you're managing a team, what are the key kind of objectives and principles that you think has worked well for you? What would you be looking for in how you manage and support a team to be successful? So kind of, Joe, you had a large team at Ebex. You kind of talk about your kind of core principles in this.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. Yes, so I think for me, I think with any size of organization, whether it's a small, medium, or large, the reality is you just need clear direction, set processes. Right. So, if you can be very clear in your direction with sellers, with our pre-sales teams, how we're going to sell, how we're going to deliver and engage with the customer, that allows everybody to start from sort of one, square base that we can move forward. Right. So you get none of that wastage that I referred to before, and hopefully keep the cost of sale down. We've always talked about good qualification. I think, with all the best sellers that I worked with over the years, they were really, really good at qualifying, and I know that's not easy to do, because often as a seller, you ask a customer, what's your budget? What do you need? But in today's world, it has moved on, but typically we have to spend several weeks and months going through a process to get to that answer. And we waste a lot of time. But the really good sellers, they knew this is a good opportunity. The customer's right for us to have the right budget. We're going to actually really spend more time with this customer than spending lots of little amounts of time with lots and lots of customers. So it's, qualification is key for me. I think the other thing, thinking about it was, I'd always sort of say to sellers, try to drive the process as much as you can. I know we can't avoid things like RFPs or customers requesting product demonstrations. And I think if we have a very clear process, going back to the clear direction piece that I mentioned, if we can get a customer to drive and work to our process, probably our chance of success, increase considerably. And then I think we've alluded to obviously already on the previous sort of question, but how do we ensure that we deliver real value to customers? Customers have very, very little time now. So if you're not delivering value, then they're working with somebody else. For us to do that, I've always been a big believer, as attention to detail, transparency is key. If I can give the customer full transparency and real detail when I speak to them and give them information, guess what? They'll buy into me, they'll buy into the company, and our chances of success actually succeed. Right. So it's just about bringing them on that journey for me. So yeah. Please chip in, Kevin.
Yeah, no, Joe, I can't believe I'm going to admit this in public, but I think you nailed it. The thing about it is what you just said that to me is so important is clarity. You talked about that. And the thing that comes from the top down that enables a true powerful sales organization is the ability to say no. There's two winners in every deal, the one who wins and the first one out. But that comes from the top down, not from the rep. Right. The rep only feels empowered to say no to a deal when their leadership tells them I need you to give me the right forecast. I need you to be in the right deals. I need you to go win the right business for us. Because we've all been part of situations where churn happens because we sold something that we weren't able to deliver 100%, right? Or we won a deal that we probably shouldn't have. All revenue is not created equal. And I think what you said there that remains true across every size organization is clarity. Give them a clear vision. Anytime that an organization, I always say I was part of an organization that many of you came across for a little while there called TriBridge in this channel. And the one thing that Tony DiBenedetto did at TriBridge as our CEO, better than any CEO I've ever worked with, was he had 900 people rowing the boat in the same direction. That clarity enabled us to be a well-oiled revenue machine. And I attribute that to the leadership. And the last thing that I think didn't make its way in yet, but I think needs to be at least mentioned, is clarity of comp plan. People need to know and have a clear line of sight to their own income, right? Yeah. We're still coin operated in revenue. And yes, we want to do the right thing for the company and all the, but they want to know. And if you can't write it down on the back of a napkin, it's too complex of a comp plan.
Yeah.
Right.
You're absolutely right. I had actually I'd noted actually, Kevin, about a balance of the carrot and stick. Yeah. So I think, the whole point is absolutely salespeople. We all, live and breathe for, yes, closing deals and that winning feeling, but ultimately it's to do with the commissions, right? So we used to have a really good policy sort of EBEX, which is if this is the process, you follow the process, you do well, you'll be rewarded well. If you don't follow the process, then guess what? We used to have the other side of it, which is actually if it hasn't gone through this process, then, you're not going to necessarily get paid commission except from that. And
it's the accountability piece, right, which you're chatting about as well, right? You know what I mean? And like a lot of us, started off selling. Well, I did. I'm not sure you slightly different, but I started selling off CRM systems, right? You know what I mean? And you take them through the process, and you speak to your prospect about it, right? You deliver it as well, right? You have to eat your own dog food, right? You have to eat your dog food, right? Thankfully, I've got a few salespeople, Joe, that used to work for EBEX, right? And they do follow the process, you know what I mean? Even though they've been around for a long time, they still follow the process. They know the value of leads, right? They know the value when that becomes an opportunity, because it's visibility within the organization. First and foremost, that they are doing their job in a structured way, right? And that they are bringing leads in. We've got a good leads engine, right? They're being flipped opportunity. They're closing within the time as well. That visibility is great for them, because everyone knows, even in the bad times, and it's tough out there at the minute, they're doing the right things. They're constantly doing right things. That allows me to, I have to manage up with my own organization. I need to understand what the forecast is, right? The weighted probability as well. So actually then we can put resources in the right place, right, at the right times. I need to know the skill sets of those that are needed as well. It's culture, isn't it? Right. You know what I mean? And it has to be data driven as well. And to Kevin, to your point, I used to work for a company called, and you'll know them, right? Because quite a few of the guys used to work for Power Objects, right? Before they got bought by HCL. Yeah. One team, right? Think team, right? All pushing the wrong directions. It's the fundamental stuff hasn't changed, has it? Right. It hasn't changed. It's the foundational stuff that makes any organization successful, right?
And the Jim Sheehan's of the world stand out, right?
Well done. Yeah, well done. Yeah, good man he is too.
Excellent. That's really good kind of insight, and which kind of takes me on to the next topic. And what's really interesting, at Seer, we work with partners that are brand new to Dynamics, set up their own practice. We've got SMB partners, mid-market partners, and then the GSIs of the world. So kind of it's really interesting when you look at the challenges that each of those have, and also some of the similarities. So it'd be worthwhile kind of touching upon that, and seeing what advice you can give to a partner, a sales lead in each of those sectors. Okay, Kevin, do you want to kind of kick us off on this one, please?
Yeah. So I've been fortunate enough to have worked in very small organizations where you're all in one office and everybody can communicate, to multinational, global, several billion-dollar organizations trying to sell the same exact solutions that we have to sell. And really, in my mind, it comes down to a lot of the same principles that Joe and John have already talked about, but it gets harder at scale, right? So clarity of your value and your vision is very important. Doesn't matter whether you're small or whether you're large. The reason why a Power Objects worked was because you knew what they did, and you knew what they did well. Right. Yeah. They were focused on CE. They were focused on industry-based solutions in CE, and you knew what they did. Right. We've been on this journey for multiple decades in the Dynamics ecosystem in particular, trying to get people focused. And even the smaller partners, the Congruent X's of the world, who are focused on what they do, right? Those organizations who focus early typically get to scale faster, right? Yeah. And then as you scale, that clarity of vision has to remain a focal point, right? Because what ends up happening, the bigger and bigger you get, the numbers get harder. Right. It's easier to get double-digit compounded annual growth rates when you're a smaller partner. When you get larger and they still expect 20 to 30% growth, that's hard, right? So clarity of the vision and clarity of the value matters. Alignment across teams is difficult. It's easier on a smaller partner because that alignment is, I've got 7 people who are wearing multiple hats, and all I have to do is just reach across the aisle and get somebody.
It's natural. It's natural. It's easy. Yeah.
It becomes a lot harder when you've got multiple stakeholders across multiple areas of the business, but you have to remain united on that alignment, because as a revenue engine, we can't be decoupled. There's always going to be a little bit of a divide between sales and delivery and marketing and sales and all of that, but you have to be able to be in alignment. The last thing that I will mention across these organizations, and Joe mentioned it earlier, and I said, is the discipline of qualification. The biggest flaw that I see are people pursuing deals that they shouldn't even be in anymore, and not pursuing them well. To be honest, it's chasing revenue rather than going and winning a deal that I should win. So I would say the importance of qualification as you scale becomes more and more critical. I'll also give one example. One of our organizations, we were doing quite a bit of public sector work, and it was a smallish part of our business. And the moment that we got so focused on one segment of it, was state and local, plus it was state and local correctional facilities. Like, we got very, very, very targeted. It went from being $2 to $3 million a year to being $20 million a year. So that level of focus and qualification becomes critical if you want to get to scale.
Yeah, and that clarity, to be fair, Kevin, you know, in the Microsoft ecosystem, this is what Microsoft are always looking for, right? They want to closely align with partners, and we were always asked. We were great at doing lots of things at Ebex, right? But they would even ask always, look, what are you known for? What do you specialize in? Because if they can get it clear in their mind, a Microsoft seller can be clear in their mind, the end customer is clear in their mind, your business is clear in their mind. Guess what? Your chance for success increase massively, right? So I think you're absolutely right. It's really honing in on what you should be known for and what you're good for.
Yeah. That's the strength of the GTM, isn't it? Right, you know what I mean. Revisit your GTM often because things change. And for me, right, being on the journey working for a boutique GSI, right, to where I am now in Telefonica Tech, which I feel is a really good fit for me and the customers we serve, right. There's a level of control within the GSI space that you possibly don't have, Kevin, right, Joe. That's where maybe, you know, you're a practice, right, within a wider organization. So there's strategic goals of that organization to open an account, and sometimes, you know, we within AI business solutions, biz apps, can be the Trojan horse as well, right? You know, brought in, we're new and shiny as well. There's a lack of control, or, you know, they're saying they have multiple product sets they want to sell as well. So, you know, there's deals that you would want to go with because Microsoft is sponsoring you, right? But actually, we might have an SAP relationship, or God willing, a Salesforce relationship or something like that, right? You know, so, you know, I felt, you know, moving away from a GSI again as well, I had better control, right, to make the decisions that I wanted to make that were correct for my P&L.
Yeah, and 100% agree with that. And you know, we've all learned that focus matters, and it helps. It helps us be more successful. The one thing that I did not mention that actually Joe and John, both of you experienced in various forms, that I think is critical. Culture can travel as you scale. Culture can go with you as you scale. And culture in many organizations is rhetoric. It's kind of just a badge of honor that we put on our website, and we say, hey, we have a great culture. What does that mean, right? The reality of it is, the companies that get it understand that culture is all about your relationship with your people. Yeah. How do they feel every day when they wake up? Do they want to put the logo on? Do they want to come and put the boots on and get to work, right? That's culture. Culture is about motivating people in a way that they feel connected to your brand. That's culture. And that can travel. Culture can work at 1 million. It can work at 100 million. It can work at 1 billion. You just have to be purposeful with your approach to what culture means, and make it authentic, make it organic. right? And make sure that people connect with it. In our business in particular, that's critical. That is critical, especially for the engineers and the architects and the people who end up working 80, 90 hours a week every week just to make our customers happy. Revenue is one thing, but we have to maintain a culture so that we heal the divides between the different areas of the business, because what we do is hard.
And that, to be fair, Kevin, that comes through though, doesn't it? The reality is, if you get that culture right within your organization, customers see that. Like they always buy into it. You don't have to fake that as a salesperson. We always joke about it, but every time a salesperson mouth opens, they're telling lies or whatever else. But the reality is, if you genuinely live and breathe what you do, which we did very well in our previous organizations, that will come through to the customer. And I think the point is it doesn't matter. You made the point before, Kevin, whether you're a small, medium, or enterprise organization, the challenges are there. The resource challenges, which we always know. You made the point before, when you're starting up, double-digit growth is very easy to achieve. You're out there just trying to win deals. When you're enterprise, I remember we're on the hamster wheel, right? We have to keep winning deals to keep the engine moving, all the salespeople, all the delivery people. But the challenges are very, very similar. But ultimately, at the end of all of it, we're trying to sell to an end customer. And so it doesn't matter whether you're small, medium, or large. You've got to think about, what does the customer want, and how do you set yourself up best to meet their expectation. That's the key. Right?
Mm-hmm. Just one more thing. I know we've got some other questions to go on to as well. But I think the previous organizations that you guys have worked in, right, and the fact that those staff have stayed with you, right, throughout that journey as well as you've moved to it, that just proves that culture can cross organizations as well, right? You know what I mean? And your team has moved with you multiple places. That's all credit to you. I feel that's happened to me as well. I've through strength of personality, right? Strength of, trying to bring teams together, right? I just think that aids the pre-sales, sales, marketing, delivery process as well. You create a culture, right, where when people walk into the office, hopefully they feel like it's their first day again. That's what it is well. And when customers see that, right, the ease that you have as individuals, right, when you're pitching, you can almost finish each other's sentences because what needs to be said. You just know the technology, right, and so on. I feel that really resonates, and the comfortable gets a warm blanket from it, and knows that's the partner for you as well. So I think it is difficult to scale it up, right? But that's true leadership, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Really good points, James. So I think the final kind of topic I had, and would be kind of remiss of me to not mention AI and agents and the agentic universe. So what I'd like to kind of, a bit of food for thought from what you guys think. So we started off when Microsoft came out with kind of AI and Copilot. From a sales perspective, it was kind of, it reads your email box and produces a response you can send to a customer, right? And that's what helps you write a sales proposal. But really, what I think the sales leaders, where do we see in the next 4 or 5 years AI agents impacting upon the business that you have? Does it mean that you can, replicate the Parises and Tim Pikes of the world, or can we discard salespeople altogether? Are we going to have agent sellers that are doing all the work, and you as agent managers manage these electronic people, or is it just a tool to help assist the salesperson? Kind of where are we on that journey, do you think?
I did see this blog the other day that was talking to this, and it does worry me. And Tim Pike is Terminator T-1000, I think, really, as opposed to an agent. But look, I'm not worried, right? I'm not worried about my sales team, right, at all, right? But talk about how we're using agents in action at the minute, right? That's where I want to talk to you about this as well, is that Kevin, Joe, when you're gathering intelligence, about a prospect, right, before you pitch them, right, you want to learn lots about them, right? You may have your existing CRM system where you have information about work you've done in the past, deals you've won, deals you've lost, you've got it all in tail, right? But we're also using lots of different tools, right, to gather intelligence around when those contracts are closing, right? What competitors have won where, what's the competitive landscape, right? What technologies have they got in-house as well? So we can go in with a pitch that, delivers the outcomes that they want as an organization, right? Whether that be implementing FNSCM, doing CE workloads, contact center, or a big one is app modernization, right? There's a big opportunity around app modernization to do that as well. But there's all these lots of different information out there, right? But through an agent, right, we can bring that information together, right, and say for this particular account, here's the white space, right? Here's the value that they want in the next few years as well. And it really aids the sellers. So taking something that would have taken 3 days, right, to bring all the information together, doing VLOOKUPs and stuff, right? You have a bot that brings that information, right? And all of a sudden you've got an account plan, right, with the things that you want to talk about as well. I mean, that's not going to get rid of salespeople, right? But it makes them more effective as well. And I think that's the key to it. Effectiveness, right? How can we make the sellers more effective, right? You know, you cannot take the seller away, right? The sellers are the relationship people, right? That have those conversations. They're the people that pick up the phone, Joe, aren't they, right? And they drive the conversations, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. I think you made the point, right? So it's about enhancement. So, you know, I know this whole question, whether it's sellers or whether it's delivery people or anybody in the industry, you know, will they be replaced? Will AI replace it? And I know you'll probably all know the famous quote, which is, you know, AI won't take your job, but somebody who understands how to use AI will, right? And that's the key. I think as sellers, we always have to evolve, right? Once upon a time, I was thinking back, you know, when we first started out perpetual licensing, it was great. These big £500,000 deals, and we take all the commission and we rub our hands. And then we got to the SaaS world and customers buy a minimum amount of users. We had to evolve then to work out how do we just sell the value? How do we then make sure we implement more effectively? When we move from on-prem to cloud, how do we articulate that? It's the same thing with AI, right? So for me, it's technology. We have to embrace it, and then we have to just look at how do we leverage it to make ourselves better. But to your point, John, how do I articulate to a customer what the value is to them, right? That's the absolute key. And I was thinking about an example that when we used to go and pitch to some of these, you know, manufacturing companies, and they'd be looking at MRP and saying, oh, well, there's sort of two schools of thought. One was this skeptical, the computer can't tell me that. You know, I've been running production floors for the last 30, 40 years. And the other ones would be thinking, hey, maybe it will do all my job for me. Maybe I'll get sort of time back. But, you know, we used to always say about MRP, it will make suggestions. It's very clever. It will do all the things. But then to your point about the human interaction, the human judgment to be able to go in and look at that data, to interpret it and then think, actually, is this right? Is it not? Make that decision. That will not go away. Just like humans, buying from humans won't go away. It's just how do we, you know, evolve ourselves as sellers to make ourselves more relevant than less relevant.
Yeah, I mean, I'm doing a lot of work in and around this exact topic right now, right, across organizations, and everybody's struggling with it. I keep laughing because I'll hear people say, well, I'm an expert on AI. No, you're not. We're still we're trying to figure it out, right? Here's what I would tell you that I've come to. We all understand what hybrid cloud is. We are already in an era of hybrid AI. We have multiple tools available to us already. Right. So people are using ChatGPT for content. They're using 6 Sense and Demandbase for ABM. Yeah. You're using Perplexity. You're using Claude. You're using Jasper. You're using Gemini. Copilot is obviously leading the charge, you know, because you can really do so much with it. And it's so easy to develop with, right, and make it your business process. Here's the key in my mind. If we embrace that we already live in a hybrid AI world, it's everything that you guys have already said. How can I make the mundane or the inefficient more efficient? How can I do the tasks that don't require a human to spend an ungodly amount of time to do them? You know, I give you a lot of credit. You know, Sam and Joe and what you've built with Guy 365 is amazing, because what you've done is you've taken something that everybody has to do and everybody does different, and you've given an efficiency to it, right? You've made something that people can say, you know what? The value of what I bring doesn't happen when I decide what modules to use, how many hours it takes, or anything like that. And it doesn't happen in all of the project planning. It happens when I deliver outcomes. Yeah. Right? So kudos to you guys for doing that and for putting agents on top of that to make salespeople and architects and all the people who are involved in that process more efficient. I think that's phenomenal. But we all have to embrace that agentic impact and find areas. You posed a question in the beginning: are we going to be replaced? We might be in certain areas. If we have a transaction, if we make our solution so transactional on the lower end of the SMB space and we're competing with QuickBooks, on a BC deal and you can make it transactional, they will buy that way. So you could use an AI approach to sell that product. And we will see that. It is beginning and it is happening. But the more complex that we do, and the bulk of what we do in this ecosystem is complex, requires human interaction. The AI alone will not be able to just provide you with the insight or it can help you tie something to an outcome, but it can't deliver the outcome. Right. So I think it's going to be a very interesting learning process. I implore you to think that we are already in a hybrid AI world, because we are. Right. So we just have to figure out how to use the tools that are available to us to make us more efficient and make us better at what we do.
I'm aligned. I mean, we can go on constantly about this, right? But one thing for me, right, is that, if we aren't on that journey, right, another sales organization is, right. And again, go back to Kevin's point as well, right? With Seer, right, everything that I want, if I had found time to do it in my career, right, I would have done what Seer did, right? Whether that is using the new platform to kind of put in some details about an organization, what use cases around agentic would be there. If I had time, I would have done it. So it's great to have someone to give me a facility to do that as well. But going forward, right, every single organization, unless they jump on board and use the power of AI to create efficiencies within their sales process, and make sure, to your point, Kevin, concentrating on the bits that the manual effort, the people on the deals that need that effort, you can forget about closing business, right? It is multifaceted.
Yeah.
It's very nice of you, by the way, to plug and say very nice things about Seer. And I just wore my T-shirt today, and I did it. Just a bit of product placement. That's all.
I'm going to give one more prop on that, and it's very, very, very brief. Sam, when you guys started thinking about agentifying Guide, one thing you spent some time on that I saw right away was your prompting, and gave examples of what prompts. Because here's the one thing sales reps don't know: they don't know how to prompt properly. Right. And an agentic tool is only as good as the prompt that you're delivering it or asking for it to deliver to you. So, one other piece of advice is follow your lead, Sam, that you guys have done so well, which is provide guidance around prompting when you're interacting with agentic solutions.
100%. It's really, really good, insightful advice. So kind of just really thank the panel for their time and insight today. I kind of wrote, as we were talking, some of the key points that came up a lot. So, I have been a salesperson, a sales manager, director, and I've gone back to basics now. I do a lot of the demos at Seer, so I'm back into the old pre-sales mode these days, working for Joe. But really kind of things that I took away, complexity. We have a hugely complex stack of technology that we have to go and work with our customers on. Back when we were selling CRM 3.0, I'll skip out the versions that weren't perhaps as good as that, and an AX7, that was easy, right, or nav. But now we've got a very complex set of solutions. Like even on an SMD deal, we've got to work out how M365 fits into that, how Copilot fits into it. So those things, even for an SMB customer, we've got to try and add value to. I think knowledge is super important. How do we impart knowledge to salespeople? I don't think customers, because they're super well informed, they do want salespeople that they can have a value conversation with. So I think, we always tell sellers, don't just be the person making tea or coffee, add value to your customer, right? And learn as much as you can. And it is a very competitive landscape. Do better than your competitors. Respond to that email or inquiry faster than your competitors. That I don't think buyers want to wait around for responses. So let's be super fast on that. I would say the final thing is all about leadership. I do think the best organization, most successful sales teams have great sales leaders, and really invest the time in making sure you're the best sales leader that you can be. And I will encourage you, anybody that's listening to this, just reach out to John, Kevin, and Joe on LinkedIn, or provide email addresses, and I'm sure we can have a dialogue. We're all trying to be, yes, it's a competitive landscape, where it's a great community. We're all trying to help each other. I don't think mutual success is unreasonable. So really thank you all for your time, and hopefully you'll get some value out of the conversation. Thank you.
Thanks, Sam. Thanks, guys.
Thank you all.